The morning sky over New York City turned dark as massive shadows fell across the streets. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Earth Defense Command Center, watching through his binoculars as enormous alien ships descended from the clouds. The ships were unlike anything humans had ever seen, sleek, metallic, and easily 10 times larger than the biggest aircraft carriers Earth had ever built. Jake pressed his radio button and spoke into his headset. "Command, this is Captain Morrison. We have visual confirmation of at least 12 alien vessels approaching major population centers." His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly as he adjusted the focus on his binoculars. The ships moved with impossible grace, defying everything humans knew about physics and engineering. They made no sound, created no exhaust, and seemed to float through the air like leaves on water. Jake watched as one of the ships positioned itself directly above Manhattan, casting the entire island into an eerie twilight. Across the country, in Los Angeles, Amy Rodriguez sat in the Pentagon's Emergency Command Center, staring at dozens of screens showing similar scenes from around the world. The aliens had arrived simultaneously over every major city on Earth: New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing, Moscow, and countless others. The coordination was perfect, the timing precise. Colonel Rodriguez were getting reports from all defense stations, said her communications officer, a young man named Danny Price. The aliens are just hovering. They haven't made any aggressive moves yet. Amy nodded, but her mind was racing. She had spent 15 years studying military strategy, and she knew that this kind of coordinated arrival meant one thing: the aliens had been watching Earth for a long time. They knew exactly where to go and how to make the biggest impact. The streets of New York, people poured out of buildings, pointing at the sky and taking pictures with their phones. Some screamed, others stood in stunned silence, and a few actually cheered, as if this was some kind of spectacular show. Jake watched the chaos below and felt his stomach turn. These people had no idea what they were facing. The first communication from the aliens came exactly 1 hour after their arrival. Every television screen, computer monitor, and smartphone on Earth suddenly displayed the same image: a tall reptilian creature with silver skin and glowing red eyes. The creature wore what appeared to be military armor, decorated with symbols that humans couldn't understand. "People of Earth," the creature said in perfect English, though its voice had an odd, mechanical quality. "I am War Commander Zeflock of the Krellian Empire. We have observed your primitive civilization for many cycles, and we find you inadequate." Jake felt his blood run cold as the creature continued speaking. The alien's tone was casual, almost bored, as if it was discussing the weather rather than the fate of humanity. "Your technology is outdated by several thousand years," Zeflock continued. "Your weapons are crude, your defenses are laughable, and your military tactics are those of children playing with toys. We have conquered 47 worlds, and none have been as backward as yours." The camera pulled back to show more aliens standing behind their commander. They were all similar in appearance: tall, reptilian, with scales that seemed to shift color in the light. Some wore armor, others wore what looked like scientific equipment, but all of them had the same expression of contempt. "To demonstrate our superiority," Zeflock said, "we will now destroy one of your orbital defense platforms." Jake immediately grabbed his radio. "All stations, this is Morrison. Prepare for hostile action. Repeat, prepare for hostile action." But it was too late. On the screens, everyone watched as a beam of pure energy shot from the alien ship hovering over New York. The beam struck the International Space Station, which had been hastily converted into a defense platform just months earlier. The station simply disappeared. No explosion, no debris, just gone. Your most advanced orbital facility, Zethlock said with what might have been amusement, eliminated with less effort than it takes us to power our communications array. Amy stared at her instruments in disbelief. The space station had been equipped with the most advanced shielding technology Earth possessed, along with nuclear missiles and laser defense systems. It should have been able to withstand almost any attack, yet it had been destroyed as easily as swatting a fly. We offer you one opportunity to surrender, the alien commander continued. You have 72 of your hours to lay down your weapons and prepare for integration into our empire. Those who cooperate will be allowed to live as workers. Those who resist will be eliminated. The transmission ended, and normal broadcasts resumed. But Jake could see that nothing would ever be normal. Again, he looked down at the streets of New York, where people were now running in panic, finally understanding that this was not a movie or a hoax dot in the Pentagon. Amy was already on the phone with military commanders around the world. We need to mobilize everything we have, she said. Every soldier, every weapon, every piece of equipment. I don't care if it's outdated, we're going to need it all. But even as she spoke, Amy knew they were facing an impossible situation. The aliens had technology. The 72 hours passed like a nightmare. Governments around the world held emergency meetings. Military leaders developed desperate plans, and civilians either fled the cities or locked themselves in their homes. Jake Morrison spent most of that time coordinating with defense forces, knowing that surrender was not an option despite their technological disadvantage. When the deadline expired, the aliens wasted no time. The first landing craft emerged from the motherships like silver teardrops, descending toward major cities with the same silent grace as their larger vessels. Jake watched from his command post as dozens of these craft settled onto the streets of Manhattan, each one the size of a city bus. All units, this is Morrison, Jake spoke into his radio. The invasion has begun. Engage when ready, but remember, we need to learn how their technology works if we're going to have any chance. The landing craft opened with a soft hissing sound, and the first Krellian soldiers stepped onto Earth soil. They were even more imposing in person than they had appeared on the broadcasts. Nearly 8 feet tall, covered in scales that seemed to shift between silver and dark green. Each soldier wore armor that looked like it was made from liquid metal, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. Nathan Hayes watched the aliens through his binoculars from a rooftop in downtown Manhattan. As a colonel in the Army Rangers, he had seen combat in several wars, but nothing had prepared him for this. The alien soldiers moved with mechanical precision, spreading out in perfect formation as they secured their landing zone. Sir, his radio crackled. This is Sergeant Collins. We have eyes on the aliens from the east side. They're setting up some kind of energy barrier around their landing craft. Nathan adjusted his binoculars and saw what Collins was talking about. The aliens had activated devices that created a shimmering dome of energy around their landing zone. When a police car tried to ram through the barrier, it simply bounced off like it had hit a solid wall. All units, do not engage the energy barriers, Nathan ordered. We need to find another way. But the aliens were not content to simply hold their landing zones. Within minutes, they began advancing down the streets, their energy weapons cutting through cars, buildings, and anything else that got in their way. Nathan watched in horror as a beam of blue light sliced through a city bus like it was made of paper. 3,000 miles away in Los Angeles, Kate Wilson was having similar problems. The Marine Major had positioned her unit in defensive positions around the city center, but the aliens were advancing faster than anyone had expected. Their hover tanks glided silently down the streets, their weapons destroying everything in their path. Wilson to all units, she spoke into her radio. Fire at will. Repeat, fire at will. The Marines opened fire with everything they had, assault. Rifles, machine guns, rocket launchers, and even a few anti-tank missiles. The bullets bounced harmlessly off the alien armor. The rockets exploded against their shields without effect, and the missiles simply disappeared into some kind of energy field before they could detonate. Kate watched in frustration as her best weapons proved completely useless. The aliens barely seemed to notice the human attacks, continuing their advance with the same mechanical precision. When they returned fire, their energy weapons cut through the Marines' cover like it was made of cardboard. "Fall back," Kate ordered. "All units, fall back to secondary positions." But falling back was easier said than done. The aliens had anticipated human military tactics, and they had positioned their forces to cut off most escape routes. Kate's Marines found themselves trapped in a deadly crossfire as alien soldiers attacked from multiple directions. Carter watched the battle reports from his command bunker deep underground in Colorado. The general had commanded forces in 3 different wars, but he had never seen anything like this. Every conventional weapon in the human arsenal was proving ineffective against the alien technology. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're getting similar reports from all major cities. Our forces are taking heavy casualties, and we're not inflicting any damage on the aliens." Paul studied the tactical displays, showing the battles raging across the globe. The patterns were all the same. Human forces would engage the aliens. Their weapons would prove useless, and they would be forced to retreat. The aliens were systematically destroying human resistance with minimal effort. "What about nuclear weapons?" Paul asked. "The president is considering it, sir, but the aliens are operating in heavily populated areas. We would kill more civilians than aliens." Paul nodded grimly. The aliens had chosen their strategy well. By landing in major cities, they had made it impossible for humans to use their most powerful weapons without destroying their own people. In New York, Nathan Hayes was learning firsthand just how advanced the alien technology was. His unit had managed to ambush a small group of Krellian soldiers, but their small arms fire had no effect whatsoever. The aliens' personal shields absorbed every bullet, and their return fire was devastatingly accurate. "Collins is down," one of his soldiers reported. "Martinez, too. We need to get out of here." Nathan watched as his men fell one by one to the alien weapons. The energy beams didn't just kill. They disintegrated, leaving nothing behind but a small pile of ash, where a human being had been standing moments before. "All units, retreat to the subway tunnels," Nathan ordered. "We can't fight them in the open." But even underground, the humans found no safety. The aliens had scanning technology that could detect human life signs through solid rock, and their weapons could cut through concrete and steel with ease. The tunnels that should have provided protection became death traps as alien soldiers hunted down the surviving humans. Kate Wilson faced the same problem in Los Angeles. Her Marines had retreated to defensive positions in buildings and underground structures, but the aliens seemed to know exactly where they were hiding. Their energy weapons could penetrate any barrier, and their personal shields made them nearly invulnerable to human attacks. "Major," one of her surviving Marines called out, "we're down to our last magazine. What are your orders?" Kate looked at the young soldier. He couldn't be more than 20 years old, and he was trying hard not to show his fear. She had been in combat for 15 years, and she had never felt as helpless as she did right now. "Keep fighting," she said. "That's all we can do." The alien advance continued relentlessly. They moved through the cities like a force of nature, destroying everything in their path with casual efficiency. Human military units that had trained for years to fight conventional enemies found themselves completely outmatched by technology they couldn't understand. Commander Zethlock watched the battle reports from his flagship with satisfaction. The human resistance was proceeding exactly as his strategists had predicted: disorganized, ineffective, and ultimately futile. The humans were using primitive kinetic weapons against energy shields, deploying tactics that were centuries out of date and showing no ability to adapt to superior technology. How long until all major population centers are secured? Zeflock asked his tactical officer. At current rates, no more than 6 of their days, Commander. Human resistance is collapsing faster than our most optimistic projections. Zeflock nodded. 3 weeks after the invasion began, the world had changed completely. Most major cities lay in ruins. Governments had collapsed, and organized military resistance had been crushed. But in the rubble and shadows, something new was emerging. Something the aliens had not expected. Mike Davis crouched in the remains of what had once been a department store in downtown Chicago. The Army sergeant had been separated from his unit during the first week of fighting, and since then he had been living like a scavenger, moving from building to building, studying the alien patrols and learning their patterns. He had noticed something important about the alien soldiers. Their personal shields flickered for just a moment every few minutes. It was barely noticeable, lasting less than a second, but it was there. Mike had spent hours watching through his binoculars, timing the intervals, and he was now certain that the shields had a recharge cycle. "If I can time it right," he muttered. To himself, "maybe I can get through." Mike had found 3 other survivors hiding in the same building. A police officer named Lisa Brooks, a construction worker called Danny Price, and a college student named Emma Clark. They had been skeptical when Mike first told them about the shield weakness, but they were desperate enough to try anything. "You sure about this?" Lisa asked, checking her service pistol. "Because if you're wrong, we're all dead." "I'm sure," Mike said, though his voice carried more confidence than he felt. The shields drop for exactly 0.8 seconds every 4 minutes and 30 seconds. If we concentrate our fire during that window, we can get through. They had been watching a single alien soldier who patrolled the same route every hour. The creature moved with mechanical precision, following the exact same path, stopping at the exact same points, and turning its head in the exact same pattern. It was this predictability that gave Mike hope. "There," Mike whispered, pointing through the broken window. "Right on schedule." The alien soldier appeared at the far end of the street, its energy weapon held at the ready. Mike counted under his breath, timing the creature's movements. When it reached the predetermined spot, he started a new count. 4 minutes 20 seconds, he whispered. 4 minutes 25. 4 minutes 30. "Now," Mike said. All 4 humans fired at once, their bullets converging on the alien soldier, just as its shield flickered and died. The creature stumbled, green blood spraying from multiple wounds, and collapsed to the ground. "We did it," Emma said, hardly believing what she had just seen. "We actually killed one of them." Mike nodded, but his expression remained serious. 1 down, about 1 million to go. 2,000 miles away in the ruins of Los Angeles, Kate Wilson was having her own breakthrough. The Marine Major had been leading a group of 30 survivors through the city's underground tunnels, avoiding alien patrols and searching for supplies. She had lost most of her original unit, but the survivors had picked up civilians and soldiers from other units along the way. "Major," called out Ryan Bell, a special forces captain who had joined her group the week before. "You need to see this." Kate made her way through the crowded tunnel to where Ryan was examining something near the tunnel wall. It was a piece of alien technology, part of a weapon that had been damaged in an earlier battle. The device was still partially functional, emitting a faint blue glow. "Look at this," Ryan said, pointing to a section of the device. "See how it's constructed? It's not as advanced as I thought. The energy source is incredibly powerful, but the actual mechanics are fairly simple." Kate studied the device. Ryan was right. While the technology was far beyond anything humans possessed, it wasn't magical. It was still based on understandable principles of physics and engineering. "You think we can reverse engineer it?" Kate asked. "Maybe not completely," Ryan replied. "But we might be able to figure out how to disrupt it, or even modify our own weapons to work better against their shields." That night, Kate's group set up a makeshift workshop in an abandoned subway maintenance room. Emma Clark, who had studied electrical engineering before the invasion, worked alongside Ryan to disassemble the alien device. They had no proper tools, but they made do with screwdrivers, pliers, and wire cutters scavenged from various sources. "The power source is some kind of miniaturized fusion reactor," Emma explained as she carefully removed components. "But the weapon itself is just a focused energy projector. If we can understand how it focuses the energy, we might be able to build something similar." Their first attempt was a disaster. The device they built from car batteries and electronic components exploded immediately when they tried to test it. Their second attempt simply didn't work at all. But their third attempt produced a weak but visible energy beam that could burn through metal. "It's not much," Emma admitted, "but it's a start." Word of their success spread quickly through the human resistance networks. Survivors in other cities began experimenting with captured alien technology, sharing their discoveries through shortwave radio transmissions. The aliens had disrupted most human communications, but they had overlooked the older, simpler technologies that humans had used for decades. Nathan Hayes had established a resistance cell in the ruins of Manhattan, using the city's extensive subway system as a base of operations. His group had grown to include nearly 100 survivors, including soldiers, police officers, firefighters, and civilians who had learned to fight out of necessity. "The aliens have patterns," Nathan explained to his assembled group. "They're incredibly advanced, but they're also incredibly predictable. They follow the same routes, use the same tactics, and make the same assumptions about how we'll fight." Nathan had spent weeks studying alien behavior, and he had identified several weaknesses in their tactics. The aliens expected human forces to engage in conventional warfare, armies meeting armies, vehicles fighting vehicles, and air forces battling for control of the skies. They were not prepared for the kind of guerrilla warfare that humans had, perfected over centuries of conflict. "They're overconfident," Nathan continued. "They think we're beaten, so they're not being as careful as they should be. That's going to be their downfall." Nathan's group had already conducted several successful ambushes against alien patrols. They would strike quickly from unexpected directions, inflict what damage they could, and then disappear into the tunnels before the aliens could respond. It wasn't much, but it was more than any human force had accomplished in the first weeks of the invasion. The aliens were beginning to notice the increased resistance. War Commander Zethlock reviewed the latest reports from his ground commanders with growing irritation. Human resistance should have been completely eliminated by now, but instead it seemed to be growing stronger. "They are using tactics we have not encountered before," reported his tactical officer. "Small groups, attacking from concealment, then disappearing before we can respond. Our forces are trained for conventional warfare, not this guerrilla fighting." Zethlock studied the tactical displays showing the locations of human attacks. The pattern was chaotic, unpredictable, and increasingly effective. Human forces were no longer trying to hold territory or defend fixed positions. Instead, they were treating the entire planet as a battlefield, striking wherever and whenever they could. "Increase patrol strength," Zethlock ordered. "Deploy more sensors, establish checkpoints, and begin systematic searches of all human hiding places." But even as the aliens increased their security measures, the human resistance continued to evolve. Mike Davis had taught his shield disruption technique to dozens of other survivors, and word was spreading through the resistance networks. Small groups of humans were now able to kill individual alien soldiers. Though the resistance had been growing for 2 months, and the aliens were finally beginning to understand that they had underestimated their enemy. What had started as scattered groups of survivors had evolved into a coordinated network of fighters, who were learning to exploit every weakness in the Krellian occupation. Kevin Young crouched in the shadows outside an alien supply depot in what had once been Detroit. The staff sergeant had been leading night raids for 3 weeks now, and his team had become experts at moving through the ruined city without being detected. Tonight's target was ambitious, a heavily defended facility that the aliens used to store equipment and supplies for their ground forces. "Remember," Kevin whispered to his team of 12 survivors, "we hit fast, grab what we can, and get out before their reinforcements arrive." The team included soldiers, civilians, and even 2 teenagers who had proven themselves in previous raids. They were armed with a mixture of conventional weapons and the hybrid energy devices that Emma Clark had helped design. The weapons were crude compared to alien technology, but they were effective enough to disrupt alien equipment and occasionally penetrate their shields. Kevin checked his watch. 0200 hours, the time when alien patrols were at their lightest. The team moved forward in complete silence, using hand signals to communicate as they approached the depot. The aliens had sensors, but Kevin's team had learned to move in ways that confused the alien detection systems. The depot was surrounded by an energy barrier, but Emma's signal jammers could disrupt it for short periods. Kevin placed 3 of the devices at different points around the perimeter, then activated them simultaneously. The barrier flickered and died, giving his team a 30-second window to get inside. They moved with practiced efficiency, grabbing alien power cells, weapon components, and anything else that might be useful. The aliens had not expected humans to develop the ability to steal their technology, and their security was designed to keep intruders out, not to protect against theft from within. "Time," Kevin whispered, and his team immediately began their retreat. They had learned that speed was everything in these operations. The aliens' response time was getting faster as they adapted to human tactics. The team made it back to their escape route just as the depot's alarms began to sound. Kevin smiled grimly as he watched alien soldiers rushing toward the facility. By the time they figured out what had happened, the humans would be miles away, moving through tunnels and ruins that the aliens still didn't fully understand. In the ruins of Washington, D.C., Helen Murphy was working on one of her most important projects yet. The former doctor had become the Resistance's leading expert on alien technology, and she was attempting something that most people thought was impossible, building a weapon that could actually threaten the alien ships. "The power requirements are enormous," she explained to Tony Garcia, the lieutenant colonel who commanded the D.C. resistance cell. "But if we can channel the energy from multiple alien power sources through a single focusing array, we might be able to create something powerful enough to damage their shields." Helen had been working on the project for weeks, using components stolen from alien facilities and knowledge gained from studying captured technology. The device she was building looked like a cross between a satellite dish and a laser cannon, cobbled together from salvaged parts and held together with determination. "How many power cells do you need?" Tony asked. "At least 20, Helen replied, "and they all have to be charged to full capacity. Plus we need to position the weapon where it can get a clear shot at one of their ships." Tony nodded, though he knew how difficult it would be to acquire that many power cells. Each one had to be stolen from heavily defended alien facilities, and the aliens were getting better at protecting their equipment. But if Helen was right, this weapon could give the Resistance its first chance to strike back at the alien ships themselves. Meanwhile, in the underground tunnels beneath New York, Nathan Hayes was planning the Resistance's most ambitious operation. Yet, His network had grown to include nearly 500 fighters spread across the city, and they had been coordinating with similar groups in other cities through shortwave radio. The aliens think in terms of territory, Nathan explained to his assembled team leaders. They secure an area, fortify it, and then move on to the next target. But what if we take back territory they've already secured? The plan was simple in concept but complex in execution. Nathan's forces would simultaneously attack 12 different alien positions across Manhattan, creating enough chaos to overwhelm the aliens' ability to respond. While the aliens were dealing with those attacks, other teams would move in to reclaim key strategic positions. We can't hold these positions for long, Nathan admitted, but we don't need to. We just need to show them that nowhere is safe, that they can't take our planet and expect us to stay down. The attacks began at exactly midnight, coordinated through a network of radio signals and pre-arranged timing. Small teams of humans struck at alien checkpoints, communication relays, and supply lines throughout the city. The aliens, who had grown accustomed to routine patrols and predictable human behavior, found themselves under attack from dozens of different directions. Kate Wilson led one of the assault teams, targeting an alien communication center in what had once been Times Square. Her team had grown to include 30 fighters, all armed with the hybrid weapons that Emma Clark had designed. They moved through the ruins with practiced precision, using the city's destroyed buildings as cover. There, Kate whispered, pointing to the alien facility. Same plan as before, fast and hard, then disappear before they can call for backup. The attack was over in less than 5 minutes. Kate's team destroyed the communication equipment, eliminated the guards, and vanished back into the ruins before alien reinforcements could arrive. Similar scenes played out across the city as human forces struck at targets that the aliens had considered secure. Commander Zethlock watched the reports from his flagship with growing concern. The human resistance was no longer a minor nuisance. It was becoming a serious threat to the occupation. More troubling, the humans were learning to fight in ways that the Krellian military had never encountered. They are not following standard resistance patterns, his tactical officer reported. They strike without warning, avoid direct confrontation, and seem to anticipate our response strategies. Zethlock studied the tactical displays showing the night's attacks. The humans had struck at 12 different locations simultaneously, suggesting a level of coordination that should have been impossible for a primitive species. Even more disturbing, they had specifically targeted communication facilities, supply depots, and other strategic assets. They are learning, Zethlock admitted reluctantly. This species adapts faster than any we have encountered. The commander had fought in 17 different campaigns, conquering worlds across the galaxy. But those enemies had all fought conventionally, using predictable tactics and straightforward strategies. The humans were different. They seemed to thrive on chaos, finding new ways to fight every time the Krellians adapted to their previous methods. Increase security at all facilities, Zethlock ordered. Double the patrols, install additional sensors, and begin systematic searches of all human hiding places. But even as the aliens increased their security measures, the human resistance continued to evolve. Kevin Young's night raids had 6 months after the invasion began. The war had become something neither side had expected. The aliens still controlled most of the planet, but they were no longer the unopposed conquerors they had been at the beginning. Human resistance had evolved from scattered survivors into a coordinated force that was making the others' occupation increasingly costly for the Krellians. Sam Porter stood in the command center of the largest human resistance base, hidden deep in the Colorado mountains. The colonel had been coordinating resistance activities across North America, and today was the day they had all been working toward, a simultaneous assault on alien positions in 12 major cities. All teams report ready, his communications officer announced. We have confirmation from New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, and all other target cities. Sam nodded, looking at the tactical displays that showed the positions of resistance cells across the continent. It had taken months to coordinate this operation, using captured alien technology and improvised communication networks. The plan was ambitious, perhaps too ambitious, but it was their best chance to deal a decisive blow to the alien occupation. Helen, status on the primary weapon? Sam asked. Helen Murphy looked up from her monitoring equipment. The former doctor had completed her ship-killing weapon 3 weeks ago, and it was now positioned on a mountaintop with a clear view of the alien mothership hovering over Denver. All systems ready, Helen reported. We have full power from 38 alien power cells, and the targeting system is locked on their primary ship. The weapon was a massive construction of salvaged alien technology and human engineering. It looked like nothing that had ever been built before, a hybrid of two different technological philosophies that somehow worked together. Helen had tested it on smaller targets, and the results had been impressive. 3,000 miles away in New York, Nathan Hayes was preparing for the most important battle of his life. His resistance cell had grown to include over 1,000 fighters, all armed with hybrid weapons and trained in the guerrilla tactics that had proven so effective against the aliens. Today we take back our city, Nathan told his assembled teams. Not just for a few hours, but permanently. We've learned how they fight, we've learned how they think, and we've learned how to beat them. The plan was to strike at the alien command center in Manhattan, while simultaneously attacking their supply bases, communication facilities, and troop concentrations throughout the city. It was a coordinated assault that would require perfect timing and tremendous courage. Beth Logan commanded the Marine unit that would spearhead the assault on the alien command center. The captain had lost most of her original unit in the early days of the invasion, but she had built a new force from survivors who had learned to fight with determination and cunning rather than superior firepower. Remember, Beth told her Marines, we're not trying to match their technology. We're using our advantages, speed, unpredictability, and the fact that they still don't really understand how we think. Her unit was equipped with the latest hybrid weapons that Emma Clark had designed, along with signal jammers, explosive devices, and other equipment reverse-engineered from alien technology. They had practiced this assault dozens of times in the ruins of the city, learning every possible approach and escape route. The coordinated assault began at exactly noon Eastern Time. Across 12 cities, human resistance forces launched simultaneous attacks on alien positions. The timing was crucial. The aliens had learned to respond quickly to human attacks, but they couldn't be everywhere at once. In New York, Nathan's forces struck at alien positions throughout Manhattan. Teams of fighters emerged from subway tunnels, abandoned buildings, and hidden bases to attack checkpoints, supply convoys, and communication centers. The aliens, who had grown accustomed to dealing with small raids, suddenly found themselves under assault from hundreds of different directions. Beth Logan's Marines fought their way through the streets toward the alien command center using tactics that the Krellians had never encountered. They moved in small groups, struck hard, and melted away before the aliens could respond. When the aliens tried to pursue, they found themselves walking into carefully prepared ambushes. The shields are down on the east side, one of Beth's sergeants reported over the radio. We can get through if we move now. Beth led her team through the gap in the alien defenses, fighting their way closer to the command center. The aliens were finally responding in force, but their tactics were still based on conventional warfare. They expected human forces to mass together and attack in predictable ways, but Beth's Marines were everywhere and nowhere, striking from unexpected angles and disappearing before the aliens could counterattack. In Colorado, Helen Murphy watched her targeting computer as it tracked The alien mothership. The massive vessel was beginning to move, probably in response to the attacks taking place across the planet. Helen knew she would only get one chance. If her weapon failed, the aliens would quickly locate and destroy it. Firing, Helen announced, and pressed the activation button. The weapon discharged with a sound like thunder, sending a beam of pure energy toward the alien ship. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the ship's shields flickered and failed, and secondary explosions began erupting across its hull. Direct hit, Sam Porter announced, watching through binoculars as the alien ship began to list to 1. Sighed. The shields are down, and it looks like we've damaged their power systems. The destruction of the mothership sent shockwaves through the alien forces around the world. War Commander Zethlock watched in disbelief as his flagship, a vessel that had conquered dozens of worlds, was crippled by a weapon built from salvaged technology by a primitive species. How is this possible? Zethlock demanded. Our shields should have absorbed anything they could build. His tactical officer studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. Commander, they appear to have reverse-engineered our own technology and combined it with their own engineering principles. The weapon that hit us was powered by our own energy cells. Zethlock realized with growing horror that the humans had done something the Krullians had never encountered. They had learned to fight using alien technology while still thinking like humans. The result was a hybrid approach to warfare that combined the best of both species. In New York, the success of the resistance assault was becoming apparent. Beth Logan's Marines had reached the alien command center and were fighting their way inside, while Nathan Hayes coordinated attacks throughout the city that were overwhelming the alien response. "We're in," Beth reported over the radio as her team breached the command center's defenses, planting charges on their primary computers now. The explosions that followed destroyed the aliens' ability to coordinate their forces in the entire northeastern United States. Similar successes in other cities were crippling the alien occupation forces, leaving them isolated and unable to respond effectively to human attacks. Tony Garcia led the assault on Washington, D.C., where his forces had spent weeks preparing for this moment. They struck at the alien administrative center, the facility where the Krullians had been planning the integration of human survivors into their empire. "For Earth," Tony shouted as his team charged the alien positions. "For humanity." Battle was fierce, but the humans fought with a desperation and determination that the aliens couldn't match. They were fighting for their home, their families, and their future, while the aliens were just following orders from commanders who were beginning to doubt the wisdom of this invasion. As reports poured in from around the globe, it became clear that the human resistance had achieved something remarkable. They had turned the tide of the war not through superior technology, but through superior adaptability, creativity, and sheer refusal to give up. War Commander Zethlock found himself in an impossible position. His forces were scattered and demoralized. His flagship was crippled, and the humans were proving to be far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. For the first time in his long military career,